Okay, now it's recording. All right, geez, so much freaking tech to learn, man. It's like on the fly.
Right.
All right, cool. So for everybody that's going to watch this in the future, just to kind of preface on this one, so we're going to show you guys how to comp a property for a prospective buyer. So in this example, this is for when the buyer finds a property. So this is like a fix and flip guy that found this property and then brought it to one of our agents, Tirrell. And then he wants Tirrell to do his homework on it and get back to him with what he thinks would be a good potential buy price on this one. And this one happens to be listed on the MLS. So personally, where I start is I start on Monsoon. So anybody that's got an MLS login has access to Monsoon, and up here is the link for it. It's just mymonsoon.com. And then if you wanted to access it through your MLS, you go to armless.com. And then if you want to access it, mine's right up here in my menu bar, but you could also access it through the property address. So it's 1415 East Oregon, which is the address provided. And then here, there's always this tab up here, if you can see. This is where you access Monsoon, Tirrell. So you can access it right here, just directly built into the MLS.
Awesome.
Or you can go to their browser. I find the browser works a little bit, or opening it up on their website directly, it just like takes a middle piece out. I think it works a little bit better. But just get comfortable with one way and just do it however you want. So there's several different ways to comp properties, right? So just kind of for starters, the reason why I start here is because this gives you the bird's eye view of this neighborhood, right? So you can get an idea, like 16th Street in Missouri, this is all, pretty dense commercial, and there's apartments, there's all this stuff. So you can get an idea if you don't know the area already, go out.
I lived on 16th and Coulter right there for like 4 years. So I know the area pretty well.
Perfect. So and my computer just sounds like it's gonna blow up. So I'm gonna delete a couple programs here real quick. Try to make it not be so glitchy. Just give me 1 second. Click that one. Okay, so now hopefully this will speed up a little bit. Okay, so then right up here, this is actually some kind of cool stuff you can play with in here. I always leave it on the satellite so that when you first open this, it may show on the street view. So I always leave it satellite just so I can kind of get, again, an overall look at what's exactly behind it. If it's commercial, is it just parking behind the house, or if you haven't seen it yet. So just a couple of things. I mean, you can obviously play with this in here, and there's quite a bit of information, but you can get the owner's name, their address, their tax address. It shows that this right here, this is where it would show you if it was a rental property. It would say rental residence. And this here, your legal description, which you'll use all this type of stuff when you're filling out a contract. And then this section I like to look down in the deed history, because this basically shows you kind of what she bought it for. And this one's maybe we'd have a better example on another property, but this kind of gives you an idea. This one was a quit claim deed, so you never really want to use this for anything really, because quit claim deeds are when one party just basically gives the property to another party. So wouldn't be for comparable or anything, but just to get an idea where the seller's at. A lot of the time, oftentimes, you could see in here that, Shirley bought it in 2013 for 312 grand, and now they're asking what, 550. Yeah, so sometimes I like to do that mentally, because once you start to understand the psychology of sellers, sometimes you can get a really good mental idea of what they're expecting in price, right? So for example, on a property I'm trying to purchase right now, they bought it for 325 in 2018. Right. So what I did on that one, I log in here, I look at the numbers, I look at, they bought it for 325 in 2018. and they're listed at 690 grand. Right. So in my head, I'm like, oh, damn, like that's a really good investment. If, you know, at 325, you double your money and get 650 for it, you know, in a couple of years. So meaning, right. So just mentally on my end, right, I know that, I don't know, but I'm thinking that they'd probably end up somewhere around the 650 price. And we submitted an offer on that home at 600. They came back at 650, right? So I knew mentally, because the reason you want to do that is you don't want to, on an example like that, you don't want to go in at 650 thinking they're going to accept your offer, because they'll never accept the offer, at least not in this market. They'll always counter you. So we probably would have gotten an offer at like 665, gotten a counter, right? So you could see it really quickly, just looking at one little thing could save your client or you or whoever the buyer is 15K, sometimes it's maybe 50, and just kind of like thinking logically, right? So with that being said, just like kind of psychologically where they're at, right? I mean, again, we don't want to like weigh this too much into the picture. I just kind of get a glance at things when I'm starting, but she's just in the property for about 300 grand, you know, more or less. But it looks like she's had it, you know, since about 04, which seems about right. But it's like quit claimed it to herself. So a little bit weird there, but just good to show you where the deed history is. So then like diving into the comps, right? So there's this little comp button up here. So this makes your life pretty easy. Sometimes there's several different tools that you can use, you know, for many different, there's a million different ways to comp a property, right? So this just will vaguely throw some data at you. And these are all changeable items. So, and you can add or modify, and you could even add a lot more and get a lot more specific, right? Pools, rooms, sale date. I use this as, again, like just kind of bird's eye view looking at things. So this is how mine's preset. So I do a half a mile right now. I do 12 months because inventory has been so low over the past year, to where, you know, if I go back down to 6 months and reapply this, you know, it shows me 2 comps. That doesn't really do much for me. So I like to take, you know, 12 months within a half a mile at first. If there wasn't a lot of comps within a half, I'd step out to 1 mile. In this event, there's plenty of comparables in a half, so you don't want to go out that far. And then like visually, right on the map, how we comp how I comp properties is dependent upon the area and how confident you are. I know the boundaries for this neighborhood. This part of this area over here on the 51, this does not comp out an appraiser, even though it's within a half a mile. It's pretty unlikely, in my opinion, that an appraiser, you know, and this is just thinking for like maybe a retail buyer, so just like in a general sense, but appraiser's probably not going to cross the 51 to use comparables when there's, you know, 6 over here, you know, and 12th Street, jumping 12th Street. I really don't think there's any difference in this neighborhood versus this neighborhood, like major difference.
I don't think so either.
Since there's only one, I probably wouldn't use it, but we can kind of look at them on a 1-by-1 scale after that. But things to like look out for when you cross major streets like this, you guys, is going to be school districts primarily. So, you know, keep that in mind for a buyer, you know, but if the buyer is not really expressing too much concern on school districts, an appraiser's not necessarily going to weigh that in too much too. But if you're ever wondering why, like, say if number 8 sold for 750 and it was a model match comp, it could be because the school district's like significantly better, right, for that neighborhood. So just some like little things to keep out for. But I'm going to try to use this 1, 4, 5, 3, and 2 all right here as much as possible, right? So how you start to eliminate these is you just scroll down and check the boxes. Like, we know we don't like 9, 10, and 11. So just right away, you can get rid of those. And this kind of refines it a little bit. And we can take out 6, 7, and 8 for right now too, just to give you like an idea, right? And then just kind of like, I'll just reference this, and I do it differently. I like to just write these numbers down, right? So I know it's a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1748. I reference the MLS for this personally, because when you're referencing monsoon, sometimes it tells you like the total room amount. And I don't know if it'll show me on here, but the room amount sometimes will be like 8, 9, 10. And that's because it's counting like the living room as a room. And like, if there's an office, that as a room, and the kitchen as a room. So the room count can get really confusing on the tax record. So again, I just reference MLS data, right? So I know 32, 1748, right? Square footage. So in this
Right.
one, this is already going to factor in building square footage right here. So 10%, right? So it's going to adjust up or down by about 170 square feet. And then this is going to do, it's not going to factor in lot square footage, but you can already tell that 1 and 4 and even 5 are going to be larger lots. We're a little bit more narrow. But lot square footage in these types of neighborhoods, I'm not too worried about. Like maybe the corner lot would get a little bit of push in value, but you just wouldn't want to be comparing something that's a lot of, like an acre in comparison to a half an acre or less, right? So in different neighborhoods, that's where you can kind of adjust these settings as much as you want. And again, this is a bird's eye approach, right? So as we get better with this, you can play with this tool really, really quickly. And then get a much, much better idea on pricing, right? So estimated ranges, this is an important field. So this is just going to factor in these 5 properties, their estimates, right? So this, and if you hover over stuff in here, so this is saying the low, average, and high values are calculated by taking the lowest, average, and highest price per square foot of the comps multiplied by the square feet of the subject property, right? So this is just showing you how they're calculating this value line. So you kind of know, like for ARV, right, on the high side, in this particular case, this would be high side, right? Because there's not a whole lot of data it's showing. But if you valued a home by price per square foot, which I'll tell you right now in this neighborhood is almost irrelevant, because there could be a home in this neighborhood that's 3,000 square feet right next door to your home that's 1,200 square feet, right? So the 1,200 square foot home that sold for 500 doesn't mean that you're going to get that same price per square footage for a 3,000 square foot home, right? So like and just to give an example on that, like my house we bought, right, call it 300 grand, right, 1,000 square feet, so $300 a foot, 3,000 square foot home behind us listed right after we bought, trying to get $300 a foot, right? Like it doesn't make that house worth 900 grand or $1 million just because they're twice the size, right? Or 3 times the size. So just things to factor in and think about, like price per square foot. And that's a really, really good point to hammer in to a seller that's trying to get price per square footage as value, right? Because really quickly, even right here, you can see how in their head, they could come up with a valuation of 650 for a property, right? Like really, really quickly, and price per square foot's not always relevant. In some neighborhoods where they're all model matches, right? And then like yours has a balcony and theirs doesn't, or yours has a pool and theirs doesn't. Sure, you can play with price per square foot a little bit more, but in this one, see how we're 1748, they're 1584, they're 1906, they're 1816, 1630, 16. So none of these are a model match comparable sale, right? So you will already know that the floor plans on these ones can be entirely different. We're not necessarily going to get exactly the price per square foot. So again, bird's eye view, right? This one's listed at 550. Looking at these comps, right? There's one at 600, right? So what I would do on a high side, I look at the high one first. I'm trying to establish like the app, because this, remember you guys, this is for a property that's his client's looking to flip this home. So I want to look at the high price, like our price per square foot was showing like 650, but there's one comp that closed at 604, right? So we know this is going to be the high side comp for this neighborhood in this square footage realm, because we're 1748, this house is 1630. And to just keep in mind, right, that sometimes this data gets really screwed up for some reason. So I always click this MLS number over here and reference the MLS, because sometimes if there's like a wacky addition or something, like this one looked right, so I wouldn't be terribly concerned, but I always like to double check because sometimes these numbers are different. So 1630, right? And this guy was listed for 27 days, right? Originally listed at 525, right? So this one, and you can see right here, multiple offers received. So this was, prime example of a home that's listed appropriately in price and lets the market just really demand up the sale price really, really hard. So that's a good pitch, which we can go over in another time, but for a listing appointment. This would be a really prime comp to get that listing price down to drive up demand on the property and ultimately have somebody overpay for the home, right, at 604. So, and this area too, just kind of like little tidbit here, but always look in this special listing conditions box when you're showing houses and everything, because sometimes, see how this one says probate estate. I bet that was clicked by accident, but it's also owner agent. So that, meaning like there's just a few other disclosures you'll need to make to the client when, if you were in the event that you were purchasing this house. But this should say, most of the time, this will just say NA, right? Which means nothing special, right? So just kind of a basic note there. But so this one, right, 605, 604, that's showing you kind of what the ARV is going to be. And you're a little bit bigger, right?
Right.
So this guy, and just to kind of go back here, kind of go back. I wanted to show the photos of this property. Right. So this one's like a good example of something that's, clean. This would be kind of like a lipstick flip. You come in and got, what's currently there, do new floors, paint, carpeting, windows, change the doors. Right. So I never, personally, just me, I never give quotes on like, hey, I think you could put 50K into this place and rip it for 600, right? Or like rip it for 750. Right. So I'm not giving notes like that to people. If they like specifically ask, right, then you could kind of give them some averages, right? And I just will give like average on the really, really high side. But you don't want to like overstep and start acting like contractor, or overstep and start acting like, the price per square foot. And you're like, because then you could start influencing them. And 9 times out of 10, the investor is going to know their numbers unless they're brand new.
That's what I was going to say. I think he would know, because he has 3 projects right now. He's done quite a few this year alone. So he just moved here actually, I think in March or April, and he's done a lot of, but I think he would have his own numbers in his head.
Okay.
Just by looking at it.
Perfect. So so I just kind of wanted to get a look at that one, right? So right now that's telling me like, after looking at some of these comps, right? So we looked at the high one, right? Now I want to see the low. So there's one at 450 right here, like literally right on the same street next door almost. Right. So I want to look and see what this one got, and see what I mean. The data is weird in here, right? So this is pulling data from 2009, 42, 1560. Right. I don't know why this listing showed up, because like you just have to watch out for stuff, because like MLS number, we're at like 6.5 right now. This is 4.2, so this is really, really old. So just like be wary of that. So like in this event, right, you kind of got to take an extra step here. But then I would just go open a new MLS and then just research this property directly. So this should give you, oh, this is showing. So then maybe I missed something here. So this will be a good point to make too. 450, yeah. So this is why it's doing that. See how it says transaction column, non-MLS. These are never good comps to use, because we don't know who they sold it to. We just like an appraiser, just from a retail standpoint, appraiser's not going to use non-MLS comps, because we don't really know. We don't know the condition of the home. We don't know anything. They can drive by it, but the condition very likely in 2009 is not the same as it is now, but it's possible. So there's just too many unknowns, right? But still, right. And that could also be why it was lower. Maybe it was a sale. And you can look at the data, right? If you really want to like dig into it more, you go to this tax tab here, and you look at what the non-MLS sale was. So a private lender, right? So this looks like it sold from Peter and Daniela just now in 2021 to Hammer Homes Incorporated. Sounds like a flipper, right? Financing, they sold to with a private lender, right? So meaning probably hard money for this sale, right? And they sold it for 450. They put 150 down. They're running a 300K mortgage. So this one would be a really, basically a solid example to show to your client potentially on what a good acquisition price would look like in this neighborhood. Because he bought it for 450. we know they can go for up to 600 right now, right?
Yeah.
And then like, this is also a good example, right? Like bird's eye view, right? Why this view? And I know I'm chasing myself backwards. This neighborhood can pull really, really high numbers, right? This is a $1.3 million house in the middle of a neighborhood, and house is selling for the 4, 5, 6 range, right? So the dirt's really valuable. So that could also be why this property, in my opinion, is listed a little bit on the higher side, because it could be appealing to potentially a builder that's going to go in and scrape the lot and then, you know, build something for 1.5, right?
Yeah.
Because these lots can support these 3,500 square foot homes, right? So these neighborhoods are definitely a little bit more difficult to like comp out. But like, so just to be like on the really conservative safe side, right? Like we know there's a comp at 604, right? Already. This one's at 635 active. So this is, you know, I don't know if, let's see if this one's another flip or not. Normally you can get a pretty good idea. Probably this one's definitely not a flip, I wouldn't say, but they're listed at 635. And then I go into the MLS from here, click that MLS link, and then I'll show, you know, my potential clients this too. Like that other one on, let's see if I can find it here quick. This one listed, oh no, so let's see. I just want to show how quickly this one sold versus this other one sitting on the market for 15 days already. So this one listed on, and this is where you break these dates down, but March 26th. And then they were closed on April 22nd, right? So they got under contract very, very likely in about 24 to 48 hours, right? Because you see the 26th to the 29th. This is, again, you know, you can show somebody like this is what a bidding war will do if you price the property right, push up the price 80 grand, right? 90 grand. So you can kind of see how that worked versus, you know, coming out on the high side. And then this house, this other one we were just looking at, is sitting already for 15 days, right? Which is too long, right? And they originally listed it at 650, right? So the reason you want to show this to your investor is like, hey man, like, you know, this neighborhood for these smaller, we're 3 bedrooms, you know, 1748, right? So we're 3 bedrooms. This house got bigger. This one's got a garage, right? It's not like super, super nice and brand new updated, but it's totally move-in ready. For homes like this, you know, they tried at 650. This one's sitting at 635 right now. This is realistically probably about the ceiling for that neighborhood, because you got to factor into market conditions like currently, right? So this other one that sold for 604, it sold back in April. We just looked at it, right? So markets, you know, homes have appreciated a little bit, gone a little up and down, honestly, but since April to November, right? Like homes have appreciated in that time frame, right? So if that house was on the market today, it'd probably be about 625, right? It would be about where it'd sell, give or take, right? So that's establishing the ARV, right? The after repair value for this property. So now what we'll do, this is a really, really cool tool that I personally love. I go to narrpr.com. You create an account. This is free. It comes with your MLS subscription. It's a tool created by the National Association of Realtors. So they really don't have like any bias to these properties like a Zestimate would, or like, you know, anything like that. So I just like using it. I'll punch in the address. Again, this is just another resource. I do this second though. Take note of that. I don't start with this unless I'm like super rushing. Because the reason why is I don't want to go in comping out a property with a bias of what I already believe it's worth. So this one, and they just updated this too, which is really cool. It used to not give you their valuation if a property was listed. Now they do. So it's saying it's listed at 550. They're like, I forget what they call this thing, RVM, right? So whatever. I call this like a solid buy price for a consumer buyer that's going to move into the house. But why I use this tool most importantly is this range right here. So on the high side, this house, you know, if it was updated, you know, and not like super flip, right? So this other property would be a good example, right? This is probably kind of where they're still came out a little high, actually, now that I'm looking at it. But this is saying with a 5-star confidence rating that this house at the absolute most is worth about 557 based on all their data that they use, right? Which is way more data than we just looked into, right? But they're also saying like, look at this. This would be like a red flag to me as like why I wouldn't really totally factor that in. Says in the past month, this RVM has gone down 65K, right? So
yeah,
you know, that's alarming for whatever reason. Again, this is just another data point I referenced. And to be honest with you, if this said, you know, 625 or something, that's why I would use it. And a lot of times I use it. This is just normally what the ARV is on the high side. And then if you're like super, super nice, right? Like nicer than most in the neighborhood, you can certainly push this number. This is just a range. But if I was taking this listing, I would have done the same thing. I would have said, hey, you know, based on its current condition, we got to, you know, address X, Y, and Z. But I would never list this property above 550, which is where they're at.
Right. Okay.
So again, you know, going back here, but ARV is probably about 625 on that property.
Okay.
Right. So, and that's again after repair value. Excuse me. So I'll just show you, you know, real basic math. I think we should all know how to do this, but I'll pull it up here so you can see it. This is basically where you want to acquire properties. Every investor is different, right? So some investors, depending on condition, you know, they want houses at 50% of ARV. Other, you know, investors will want property at 60, 70, 80, 90% of ARV. Looking at these photos, this property realistically won't need a ton, right? So that's what I would tell my client. But like looking at the roof, like a buyer at top dollar is probably not going to want that old school style like roof on it, right? But they're not going to want any of this. So you're going to need floors, paint, you know, everything, full new kitchen, right? So it's gonna need work for sure, right? And then like this is a little weird. This is what I'd point out to them. This is probably the original patio. These step downs can kill deals. Where the demographic buyer is a little bit older, they don't want any steps at all. Like, you know, people can fall down this. It's just kind of dangerous. And that was an addition too. So sometimes when you're in the house, the square footage just feels totally different because that was like probably originally a patio, right? But point is, on a property like this, I would probably use like 75 conservatively percent of ARV, right? So you can do like the ARV 625 times, you know, 0.075. I think I did that wrong. 625.
0.75, right?
What's that?
It would be 0.75.
Yeah, 75%. Yeah, my bad. Okay, I looked right, but like almost not quite there. So this would be like a solid acquisition price for this property, around 468, 475, right? Like ceiling.
Yeah.
And on this one, you know, just building relationships with investors is more important than selling them a bad deal, right? Because looking at this one, this is not a flip at 550 because you can't even, you think about the numbers logistically, right? So you start thinking about things, right? Like even if he was able to get 650 for this property, which we're not seeing, like that could be maybe the ceiling if you're like speculating a little bit based on the comps. And sure, the market's known to do crazy things right now. Like, you know, people bid up prices real high and everything, but like no smart investor is going to bank on that bidding war happening, right? Like, so just kind of keep that stuff in mind because he could really easily, I mean, and some flippers can do work for super, super cheap. Like some people get AC units for $500, right? Some people run a paint company and they paint for 25 cents a foot, right? Like some people have a floor. So like, those are the types of questions I would ask them, but I'm always really conservative on my approach because I would work more towards building a relationship with this guy. Because if you sell him this deal, you know, first of all, if he bought it at 550, you know, he's got some other problems because he needs to look at things like himself. But they're kind of expecting us to do that for them.
Right.
Like say, for example, you said, hey, you know, let's buy this dang thing at 550, like just trying to get that quick, you know, 15K check. Right. And say, you know, and for this example, say he buys it, right? He goes in and puts on a normal level, let's say he spends 75K on this property or 100 grand for easier math, right? Now he's in it for 650, right? Like he's screwed, right? Even if he's trying to make a 50 grand profit, he's trying to sell it for 700. He's going to sit on the market. Who's going to be the agent? You know, you are, right? So you're going to have this overpriced listing. Yeah, you're going to have this guy cramming you down your throat. Like, what the hell? Why isn't this selling? You sold me a bad deal, right? Like, what's going on, right? Total headache where like we could have just focused on. Yeah, right. So meaning I'm conservative on my numbers for new clients that are flippers because and then I just tell them straight up like, hey, this is how I run my numbers for flips. Most of the time, MLS deals aren't really good flips because a lot of them are overpriced, but you know, we can definitely find some in there. So I would just say like, hey man, if you want to make a cash offer on this property, let me call. So you'd call the agent, you know, have a conversation, figure out where they're at, you know, kind of what the motivation is, right? Talk your client up, you know, see what we can do, and then just write them a low ball offer. You know, I think they would say let's low ball offer at 470. You know, but that's where like you would have a little bit of margin for your guy, right? So at 470, realistically, I wouldn't say you'd need to put in 100 grand to a property like this. But we know like that other one's sitting at 635 and it's got a garage, you know, it's not like brand new flip materials, but it's still like turnkey, you know, someone can move in. So we know 650 is the ceiling. So he's going to need it like realistically as close to 450 as possible. Right, because he's going to pay, you know, 4, 5, 6% commission, whatever you want to negotiate with them. Then he's got closing costs. Then a buyer's going to come in and ask for repairs. Then he needs like a contingency budget, right? Like he's not going to know if, you know, in the MLS deals, you get a little bit more, you know, grace on the inspection period and whatnot. But you know, like in the event that there's a lot of trees on this property, right? So for a buyer like of mine, I would say, hey, like pay the $250 to get the sewer line scoped, make sure there's no roots in your lines, right? Because that could add another 15 grand to your renovation, right? And that could be his total profit, really. You know, after he paid everybody, paid title and escrow, did repairs, you know, everything. So on this one, grand scheme, I think yes, as an agent, if I was on the listing side, sure, I would take it at 550. I would let it sit, you know, maybe somebody wants something just old and, you know, good bones and they can move right in or, you know, whatever. But, but I would say like realistically as a price ceiling, it's speculating, but I would say like 625 to 650 is the high side for even flipping here. Yeah. So you could go back to him and just say, you know, hey man, like we looked at the property, you know, I'm thinking it's on the high side.
That's what that was my gut feeling when I first looked at it, even without doing all this. So and this is just kind of for learning because you'll use this all these tools and everything on other properties. But again, if you're like on the fly, right? This one wasn't a good example because this big price change. But normally this is about the ARV. When this is 5 stars, this is about the ARV. Yes, properties can get bidded up, but an ARV meaning you could sell for that if it's move-in ready. ARV doesn't need to mean it's got brand new windows, brand new AC, brand new roof, brand new this, brand new kitchen. Like just like that other one, 635. So maybe this one, I think the data in there's just a little screwed up just because of like that new build and you know, home prices are all over the place. But so that price, that range on the 1415 East Oregon, that would be the value like after he would renovate it. Is that's what they're putting there? That range?
But that's something I point out because this is just data. This is raw numbers. I know the photos are in here, but this is just data. So they don't know what the condition is. That like there's so many unknowns in this data for these types of neighborhoods. They're better for like HOAs where there's very, very similar properties. You can get really, really accurate. But like, see, this one's saying the same thing. You know, this one's saying like 550 on the high side and their valuation is like 500, right? So, you know, again, and I don't think this is the most accurate data, but this house isn't anything special, but it's nice, you know, like it's move-in ready. It's definitely not a flip, right? Someone's lived here for a while and it's probably a little rough, but they've got a pool too, you know? So that other house you're looking at doesn't have a pool.
Doesn't have a pool.
So that's where, you know, tell your guy like, hey man, there's the, you know, ARV for this property on the high side is probably like 625. You make it like spectacular. Show them this one, literally this one. Show them the flip at 605, right? And then show them this one with the pool. They think they can just pull 20K more right off the top just because they've got a pool, right? So they'd probably sell this thing for 625. Wouldn't be a bad number, honestly, right? But these numbers are kind of scary, especially if you acquired at 550, right? Because
I mean, that one has
go ahead.
Another bedroom and a pool, and around the same square footage, I guess. But
and it's not selling, right?
And it's not selling too, right?
Yeah, so you got to ask yourself why, right? So, and why in this market, I know it's November, but in this market, this should sell in a freaking second, right? So, and maybe there's something really weird in particular about this lot that we don't see in the photos, but like, you know, looking at it on here, it's like second house in, you know, like probably nothing extremely weird. Right. But like, here's their data though. So you can kind of tell like, these are their valuations on all these properties. So like, here's one at 495 that's listed, you know, they're saying this house is worth 780. These ones are much larger, right? So the data again, in these neighborhoods on this tool isn't the best because there's such a wide range in square footage differences, but overall RPR, I use it religiously to get numbers for properties. So, so yeah, on that one, moral of the story here is probably like 465 to 475 is like a high number for him to acquire it at. But like, if he wants to make an offer, that's probably where I'd recommend it. And then just show it to him, be like, hey, you know, everybody's costs are different. You know, if you think you could swing it, you know, and put 20K into this thing you know, if you get 475, we're in at 495, like, you know I could push about 600 if you make it real similar. And you don't want to like sell them the dream on this price, but you want to talk, you know, you want to talk based off your data. So you know that home sold for 600, right? Can't find the comp right now. But you know that other one sold for 600,
right? So
you know that that's a legitimate possibility, 605, right? Even though that was a big bidding war, this bidding war didn't happen yesterday, it happened 6 months ago, 8 months ago. Then, you know, this is a real possibility to get these prices, right? Normal sale, you know, in a normal sale, just so you know too, on this stuff, this one says it's a flip, right? But so for the tax records, I believe it's either 3 months, so 90 days, or 180 days. But if it's bought and resold within 90 days or 180, I forget which one exactly, that's where it gets this flip designation, right? So whoever owned this one, like right here, even though we're calling it a flip, they could have just taken forever to do it, you know? So, and again, like you can really dive into these things if you wanted to on the tax, right? So, yeah, I mean, no. Well, let's see. William Lockwood sold it to his estate. So it could have been a deal too, to where this guy, William, bought it in 14, right? And then just renovated it to sell it for this high price. And this guy, Randy, actually, like, it's funny, like once you're in the business or longer, but Randy used to be on my team, you know, and that was kind of the stuff he would do. So he's just creative, right? And he could have worked out a deal, right, to help the seller do some renovation, right? Sell it for a higher price. He takes the, you know, 20% of the profit difference. You know, so there's like a million different ways someone could look at a deal and like speculate on it. Yeah. But, you know, here at 550, sure, for a buyer that's going to move into it, great. You know, for 500 maybe, or 525, considering the condition. Sure, like it'd probably appraise for that. You know, I really wouldn't be concerned at that level, but for a flip, I mean, have to be at like, you'd have to be really good at price material, get in and out quick, sell it sell it next, March, February, March or sooner.
Yeah.
And you could tell them, hey, I'd list this thing at 599 or 575, try to get a bidding war to bid it up to 620 range versus sitting at 625 because you look overpriced.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So so that's that one. I think that was a pretty good example, but for like a buyer client. And then like for a traditional buyer, same exact thing, but like you're not factoring in reno, and like, if they're factoring in reno, great. You're just trying to get the property to appraise. You want to make sure, but like on these types of deals, like these are good for buyers too, because this one's like a traditional buyer because it's sitting on dirt that's really valuable, right? We know it's overpriced for a flipper, right? So these are great deals for buyers, traditional buyers, to come swoop in and find a deal with some equity on it instead of overpaying, and then like on a traditional buyer, I use that RPR tool all the time. So I would tell them like, hey, like personally, I think it's a decent buy. Like let's start at 525, 500, and then get them up in price, right? Or get them down in price.
Get them down in price.
And, Yep. And then they do some renovations, like a kind of like a live-in flip, but live there for 3 to 5 years. I give people these types of ideas all the time. It's just what they want to do versus, going and buying at 625, and just buying like a renovated house just to sit. Like if the market comes down, like those are the houses that get impacted quickly, right? When people are overpaying for these things. So just some other ideas to kind of keep in mind for other types of clients rather than investors. But and then C, just kind of like circling back to where we started. Low, a good price on this dang thing would be about 400. Like, geez, even better, 330, right? But that's why you don't just like look at one thing and run. You don't want to say like, hey, ARV 647 based on the price per square foot averages and the neighborhood based on 5 comps, right? And like sound like a little machine. You want to like really evaluate things. So 500 in this event, these are solid comps. After we looked at everything, I think 500 is pretty dang accurate for this property. If this is in below average condition, this property, but an average sale price of 500 is like not that crazy, I wouldn't say. And they're asking 550, right? So getting a little bit of margin on a flip on an MLS deal where there's commissions involved, like it's really got to be lower. As close to 4 as possible. But, if you send them an offer at 4, they probably won't get any traction, So
for sure.
So just something to like run by your guy.
Okay.
But I would rather build a relationship with him and say, hey, like personally, I'd pass on this. If you want to offer, let's start at like 450. See if we get any traction. Because unless he's like, oh, that's low, that'd be great if we got it at that price. But my cost on a house like this, like I could flip this thing for 10 grand, right? Like we don't know. I don't know if this guy flips 20 homes a year or, I let them do the numbers. I never say, because everybody's different, right? Like I'm not gonna have my contractors go, like I can't even find contractors to do my own work, so I never want to sell somebody the dream. I'm like, yo, like buy this, like, and then they do, and then you totally let them down.
He does a lot of the work himself, and then I guess sometimes for some of the certain things he has guys that he hires and stuff. But I mean, it seems like all the flips that he's done since he moved here, it was like he's profited on. So he seems to be pretty calculated, and he knows his stuff pretty well. But
cool.
So
yeah, man, I'd just show him. I'd show him the house though, personally. So did he see it already?
What's that?
Has he seen this house already?
He just had a flyer that he showed. I met with him in person, and he's actually kind of
cool.
A friend of mine. Like I just met him a few months ago through another mutual friend, and he was like, "Yeah, man, I flip condos and houses," and he was showing me some of the work he's done, and so he was just like, yeah, I just picked up this flyer. I'm interested in this one. He was like, you could run the comps and tell me if it would be, a good deal for me. Then keep me posted. And then he was like, other than that, I'm really looking for. He's like, I'm really interested if you guys have any like off market deals as well. And he was like, just send me anything that you find my way that you think would be good. And then we can, look at it. So
absolutely. Yeah. And so that's, again, I know we talked about it in the meeting today, but we're going to work on a list for Zaback Group agents.
I thought that was a good idea.
Because, and the reason for that is is we don't want to be sending like the email blast that's sending to everybody, because in my opinion, right, like, and it's not my like this ultimate decision to like choose what happens here, but in my opinion, a lot of those deals get sold out in seconds. Like literally, like if there's good deals on those lists, they get sent really quick. And I don't want to be like sending those types of deals to my clients, because an average flipper or like cash buyer isn't going to be able to open escrow in 2 hours or 4 hours, you know, like, and that's literally the competition right now in that like flipper world. And maybe your guy is right, but I would rather, and another reason why is because if you set them up on the list, and it's all about how you run your business and how you want to get paid. But the reason I don't put my buyers on those lists is because those deals from wholesalers don't pay you a commission. So just keep that in mind. So if you send him one of our deals, you mark up what you want to get paid. So if we have a deal for him at 395 and you want 5K on it, you send it to him at 400 and you'll get your cut from title at closing. Right. And that's how you get paid on wholesale stuff when you represent the end buyer and you want to get paid in the middle as the real estate, as basically the deal finder, right? You're not an agent in that aspect.
I had a question on like, because basically I just kind of briefly spoke with him because I was like, hey man, like how do you, because he has another realtor that he works with, like I said, and he was like, yeah, we work deals a few different ways, but he was like, he finds, you know, deals, sends them to me, and then I will like, you know, acquire the property. But he said that he doesn't pay a commission, or the realtor doesn't get a commission up front when he buys it, but he gets the commission on the back end when he lists the property for him. So I don't know, like so how again, would that work with, like if I send him a deal, like how would that work without me having any commission when he buys it? And then, you know, like how would that work?
I'd be really careful with people like that. He's because here's the deal. And this is what I tell people straight up, and I'll just tell them, because quite honestly, no one wants to work for free. He doesn't work for free, you know? So it's like, so what I'll tell people is like, hey man, no one works for free. If you want me to dig around in a market where there's virtually no deals and find you a deal and spend, you know, maybe let's say an hour a day, right? Call it 3 to 5 hours a week, finding you a deal for, call it 2 months, right? You want me to spend what, you know, 40 hours, let's just call it, digging around for a deal, which we may or may not find. And then when I do find it for you, you don't want to pay me. And of course, you never say this like how I'm saying it, like with tone and like straight up, right? You say it like in a more professional manner, but I would just say, hey, like no one wants to work for free. You know, and we don't have a relationship yet. So I say on the first deal I bring you, I want to get paid on the buyer side. I'm going to cut you back. I'll charge you less on the listing. Right. So if you want, like, cause you could list the house for $1,000 if you wanted to, I wouldn't, but you could charge them $1,000 and you could take the full 3 on the buyer side. And then you just guarantee, reason why is you just guaranteed yourself a listing, right? Cause now he's like, oh, I want to list it with him, cause he'll basically do it for free. Right. But if you already got paid, you know, your commission up front. But the reality of it is I take pay from a new client on the first deal. Then I give a discount on the second deal. And me giving a discount is 1%. And I say, hey, I'm dropping my commission 1%. So I drop it from 6 to 5 or from 5.5 to 4.5. And, you know, we can have a commission discussion on another call if you want. But I give it on the back end, because that's the way you'll guarantee a paycheck up front. And then if they ghost you and never hear from them again and they use somebody else or whatever, you got paid to do work. You don't want to like sell yourself short and like find him a deal and then he goes and lists it with the other guy. Right. And there's people like that out there. And typically the personality type for that is the guy that's like, yeah, like I'm an amazing guy. You know, I do all these flips and like, and I know in this case, I'm not like bad talking to your client because like a friend of a friend. But basically you just say, hey, like, I want to build value with you. Like, I want to find you a deal. And what I tell people is, hey, I'll negotiate my buy. If I find you an MLS deal and we're so razor thin close to getting you the deal by $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000, which I just educate them on how much I actually make versus what they perceive I make. Then I say, I'll negotiate with my commission as much as I possibly can to get you the deal if we're really that close. But if we're $30,000 apart, like, you know, my my 9 grand commission is not going to get you anywhere. Right.
Exactly.
So I educate them on what I make. Right. So I'll just say like, hey, like, you know, I'm on a broker that charges a split. I'm on a team that charges a split. You know, like we pay salaries to our employees on the team. And, you know, the reason for that's to help you guys when you resell your property, right? We've got a marketing coordinator, a transaction coordinator, right? And then I've got to pay taxes. So like you're telling me, you know, you want me to do this for free, essentially. And then like you use my employees that I'm paying a salary, right? And then my broker won't even let me represent you for free because we carry an errors and omission insurance that we have to be charged a commission, because what if you sue me, right? Or what if something happens? Like I can't be caught with my pants down, right? Like we need to charge a commission for a certain reason. And that's when you say like, hey, like, you know, on a $300,000 house, if the full 3% commission, which most of the time it's 2.5 now, but a full 3, like that's 9 grand, right? At my 9 grand, I'm paying 3 of that in taxes right off the bat. I give 2 to my broker. I give 2 to my team. You know, it's like, you know, you can break it down as much as you want, right? But like ultimately, after I pay taxes and like feed myself, like I get to put like 2 grand of this in my bank account.
That's it.
Right. And it's like, how do you want me to reinvest that to like help you find more deals? Like, and you say you want to work with agents like us, like, you know, we need to get paid so we can perform for you on the back end. Like, you know, no one's working for $1,000 a month, right? Like we don't want to do one deal a month and make $1,000 off. If you're doing one deal a month, you want to make 15, 20, 30, 50 off it. Right. So, but that's how you like leverage that conversation. We could dive in more, and I'm happy to step in as much as you need.
I appreciate it, man. That's kind of all the questions I had. Like, I was just 100%. Like, I didn't know how to kind of like have a discussion with him on, because I knew that it would be like, I definitely want the commission up front, you know, if I brought him a deal, because I don't want to work for free. So just, and I'm sure he's willing to he's open to talking and discussing more. But yeah, I just needed clarification on like how to run the comp.
There you go.
To have more confidence when I talk with him again. And you know, not necessarily like this would be the first deal that we would like move forward on, but yeah, I wanted to know how to navigate that conversation of like the commission, and then also like what deals I didn't just want to send them a bunch of like deals that are, you know, people are going to jump on so quick, and by the time he even takes a look at it, it's already gone. So
and just a real like golden nugget, I want to throw this in here for everybody that watches all the way to the end too. But for me, and just something I've realized, because remember now we have 16 to 25 people at any given time. Literally all they're doing all day is trying to find deals, right? So what does that mean? So I agree, right? Like you're in the underwriting channel, and I'm not saying to go behind somebody's back and take a deal and bring it to your client because they found it. What I'm saying is build relationships with other members in our organization and go to them and say, hey, like I've got a cash buyer client that's looking for that property. And this is kind of what Todd was saying today too. But like, hey, let me know if our offer does not work out for that seller, right? If they found you a deal, like for example, I just did this with one of the guys, Andrew, on our team. He sent a deal in there and it's like 85257, caught my eyes. I'm like, oh, I've got a cash buyer in 85257. My cash buyer is actually going to move in, right? So she'd be willing to pay more than what Cash for Houses would be willing to pay. Not that I'm going to go directly to that deal and be like, yo, like I've got a better buyer, right? But if our offer is then too low, I say, hey, Tanner, if you already, hey, Andrew, if you already have a better relationship with them, maybe he could just be like, hey, I went back to my partner and actually we can pay X, and I just take care of Andrew at the end of the day, right? And then we get a deal together, right? So keep your eye on the Slack channels and keep your eye on other properties. And again, not to take another deal from somebody else, but to work it together in the event that you have a client, because a lot of those guys aren't real estate agents, right? So they're just acquisitions. So the way they get paid is when they find a deal, you know, Cash for Houses will pay them on that deal, right? So if we find a deal and we can represent a buyer and make a commission on that, sure, like you can give a little, or, you know, just build a relationship however you want, you know, take them out for lunch or whatever you want to do. You get them a gift card, whatever, but you could take care of them and they could help you find deals for your clients, right? Because your flipper may be willing to pay more than we can pay, right? And if that's a dead deal, right? And this is the main point I want to hammer is the dead deals. And this is what I've built my business on for the past 2 years. Dead deals to CFH does not mean they're dead to everybody. They are very actively, those sellers and buyers, you know, these people, whether it's MLS deal or not, they've raised their hand. They want to sell their property. Our offer just potentially didn't work out, you know, and some of the deals, you know, that we come across, it was just never followed up on. Right. So they raised their hand. They wanted to sell. They want a certain price. Maybe we're off on price by like 20 grand, 30 grand. And you could go in there, swoop in and be like, hey, you know, I've got a buyer that'll pay you this number. Now it's a win-win for everybody, right? Like now your client wins, you get a buyer commission, you know, and then you get the listing on the back end. It's like there's 3, 4, 5 deals that come out of one that's considered dead just by doing a little bit of due diligence. Because those guys, again, all day, all they're doing is, well, they're calling different data, right? But a lot of the agents on our team go through the MLS every day to find deals to represent Cash for Houses as a buyer. So, so, you know, when they represent Cash for Houses as a buyer, they get the buyer commission, right? So if Cash for Houses offer is too low and that deal is now dead, then you can go and approach that agent, right, or whoever and say, hey, what was the number you could have gotten that at? And then you can bring it to your investor. Boom.
Yep.
You know, like now you like infiltrate the whole process, right? Like, oh, they countered us at X. What if they countered them 100 grand lower than their list price? Now, you know, you can just write an offer for that and probably get it accepted. And if they counter you higher, you can be like, bullshit, right? So, you know, so like that's the really cool tool to have for these types of clients and learn how to tell that story and just go back to this video, but learn how to tell that story and share that with your clients and you'll get a lot more. So, you know, just pay attention to that type of stuff. And that's what I mean, coming in the office and just listening and just hearing things and asking the question, so valuable. So just keep that, you know, and I know your situation may be a little bit different, but you know, we're always happy to help however we can, you know, virtually like this or however.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Cool, bro. Yeah, you're very welcome. Well, you need anything else while you got me here? Are you good?
No, I'm just gonna follow up with him and just, you know, kind of just tell him what, you know, what you told me at the price point, like 450, you know, maybe 465, and then, but also just talk about the commission as well. And that I just want to build a relationship with him, and hopefully we can find something in the future.
Sweet. Yeah, absolutely. So, let's do it. Let me know what you need from me. I'm always around.
Okay. Awesome, man. Thanks again.
All right, brother. Have a good day. Have a good weekend.
All right.
See ya.
You too.
Bye.
All right.
Thanks. Bye.